fine. Off you go.
So did you make any changes to anything about the way that you eat, drink, around training or competition after Marika's talk?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you're able to kind of apply that and then change it.
Also like at training camps like this.
Excellent, good. And we'll talk about that again today. So some of the information for those who were here last year might be similar, but a good recap. Anyone else who was at the talk last year who's changed something about the way that they eat or drink around their training or competition?
More chocolate milk.
More chocolate milk. Oh, well, that's always bonus, isn't it? Yeah. When do you have your chocolate milk?
Like at the competitions. I'll have it during, like after I've fenced.
Yeah.
Because if I have it before then.
You can feel a bit full. And,
Yeah.
But afterwards, yep, good recovery fluid. Yep. Cool. Has anyone been to a different sort of talk about nutrition? At school or anything? Do you have?
We had one at, there was like, wait, was it at the women's training camp in Christchurch.
Okay, cool. And that was a nutritionist or dietitian that came on and talked?
Yeah.
Specifically related to women.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Was that from someone from High Performance Sport?
I don't remember.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Oh, it's nice that you're getting input from all different directions. Just tell me when you...
Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know Kristine Clarke, so last year we had Marika come and join us from Sports Nutrition from Incute, and the talk was really well received, so we hold your hand up, Steve. Steve here raved about it for many months afterwards and saying, that gal knows her stuff. So a warm round of applause please for Kristine.
Thanks, Baz. Thanks for inviting me to come along. Obviously I've got big shoes to fill from last year from Marika's talk. It was really good to just chat with a couple of people and hear that you've made some changes that have been beneficial since that talk. So like I said, some of the things I'm going to talk about today will be a repeat of what you would have heard last year from Marika, maybe a slightly different approach. But the whole point is to just give you a bit of an overview around sports nutrition. We can't cover everything in 45 minutes to an hour, but it's to give you some more ideas about what you can do that's going to support you with your training and your competition days for fencing. So, I'm going to make sure I don't press wrong buttons. Alright, so it is a bit of an open discussion with everyone. So if you've got burning questions as we go along, providing they're not too specific, I'd love to hear your questions as we go along. The reason I say not too specific is that if someone asks me a really specific question that only relates to them, we end up spending a lot of time just talking about that, and then I can't sort of provide information to everyone. But if you've got questions that you think will be relevant to everyone else as we go along, please ask. So we're going to be looking at specific exercises and adaptations for fencing. So I didn't know much about fencing before this, so that was actually quite fun to learn a bit more about it. And obviously I've really just had a little bit of insight. But we're going to talk a little bit about what's required for your sport itself. We're going to talk about the importance of nutrition in each food group. Hopefully you guys have got a bit of an idea about food groups, but we're going to recap on those. What happens in our body when we eat, so actually the metabolic processes at a very high level. We're not going to be delving into sort of biochemistry or anything. The specifics around carbohydrate and protein, and I think that's what some of you guys were talking about, Marika covered last year, which was quite useful. So what those two big micronutrients are, when we need them, and at what times they're better to have in our competition. And then what else have we got? What to do around trainings and bouts, and how to alter your carbohydrate intake. And last but not least, fluid intake. So it's really good to see those that have got drink bottles with them. Do you guys drink a lot throughout the day? Keeping yourself hydrated, beautiful Hawke's Bay sunny weather. So we will talk about that as well, because it's really important. Okay, so in my very brief learning curve around fencing, what I can tell is that it actually is a sport that requires a range of different sort of athletic abilities. We've got nodding at the back here. So lower and upper body strength. Yeah, you guys agree with all this? If you don't, tell me and I'll sort of learn as I go. You need explosiveness, you need agility, speed, endurance, flexibility, and also just general aerobic fitness. So because of this, it's a very varied sport, and so what you might need at different times will vary, whether it's training or competition. Okay, dialing back a step, we just want to kind of cover generally why we eat, okay? Without looking at the screen, why do we eat? Fuel, yep. What else do we eat? Yep.
Energy so that your body can process and move and do stuff.
Absolutely. Give your body energy to move around, do your training, get up in the morning. Yep. Growth, absolutely. So what ages do we have down here? I heard 11 was about the youngest? Yep. Yep. 9, okay, so as low as 9. So if we think about growth and development, sort of from the time you're very, very young to the time that you're a fully grown adult, you've got a lot of growth and development. So particularly through the adolescent period, your requirements, so what your body needs, changes quite a lot. And the reason I always talk about this is that it's important not to compare everything that you eat with the person beside you, because your requirements might be quite different. We've got adults at the back, they will need different amounts of food and fluid to the adolescents that we have down here. So it's important to kind of learn what we need for our bodies and how things might change as we go through our life. So we've got fuel for our training and sport recovery. Food is also really important for our brain function. We feed our brain well, we feed our body well, our brain works better. Who has ever felt very, very tired before a training session? Yeah. Do you think that that's ever because you've tuned up and you haven't had enough to eat that day? Yeah, coaches might say that as well, parents, yeah. So we need to fuel our body to fuel our brain. Metabolic process, hormone and endocrine, so that's kind of everything that's going on inside of our body, that's why we need our food. Supports a healthy immune system. I'm sure everybody here has had a cold over the winter because we've had a really nasty winter full of bugs. The better we eat, the better our immune systems are and the better we can fight off bugs. But also, enjoyment and socialisation. We eat because food tastes good. We want to be sitting around with other people, enjoying our food. So that's sort of why we eat. Now we're going to talk about what we eat. So we've got the 4 food groups. Who is aware of the 4 food groups? Most people? Yeah. So this is what we base all our food that we get from, we want to be putting into our body every day. So we've got meat and meat alternatives. So these are probably not very nice pictures. You can't see things so well. So in this group, tell me what these sorts of foods are, whether you can see them or you just know what these types of foods are. Yep. Chicken.
Like lentils?
Lentils, yep. So lentils, chickpeas, beans. Yep. Keep one. Eggs, yeah. Meat, yeah. Tofu, yeah. Any others? Kind of hard to see from back. So your protein food. So this is important for our muscles. They provide us with nutrients, vitamins, iron, zinc, and B12. You don't need to know the specifics about these, but just know that this is one of the main groups that we want to get our food from. Fruit and vegetables. Who here eats fruit and vegetables every day? Hooray! If you haven't put your hand up, I'm going to work on that. Alright. Grain foods. So these are sort of our starchy carbohydrates. Who can give me some examples of the sort of grain foods? Yes.
Bread.
Bread. Yep.
Never mind.
At the back there? Yep.
Never.
Rice. What else do we hear? Yep.
Pasta.
Pasta. Anything else? Yep.
Wheat bits.
Wheat bix. Yeah, good one. Yep. Anything from the back?
Croissants.
Croissants. Yeah. Yeah. Couscous, noodles, bulgur wheat, quinoa. So those are our starchy foods, and this is where we get a lot of our carbohydrates from. And last but not least is milk and milk products. So what do we have in this group? Yep.
Cheese.
Cheese. Yep.
Milk.
Milk. Yep. Dairy. Yep.
Butter.
Butter. Yogurt. What do we get from these? Says it, gives it away. So we've got protein, vitamins and minerals, and we've got calcium. So what we want to be trying to do every day is eat from these 4 food groups, but we're going to go into a little bit more specifics about what you need at different times to help with your training. Is there anyone here who doesn't eat from one of these groups every day? You don't need to put your hand up either, by the way. It's not a name and shame thing. We'll go the other way around. Who eats from all 4 food groups every day? Okay. Some people. We've got a bit of work to do. Alright. So by eating from those 4 food groups every day, we get the energy that we need from our food, we get the protein which helps us to sort of build up our bodies, build our muscles, restore our muscles after training, and then get all of the nutrients that we need. So when we talk about nutrients, we've got these 3 big groups, not including dark fibre. So protein, carbohydrate, and fat. So from those 4 food groups, we get these big nutrients that make up all of those foods. What do we need protein for? Yeah. Muscle growth, yeah. Any other ideas?
Like essential amino acids, like that?
Essential amino acids, yeah. Very well read up, which is good. Alright. Carbohydrates. Energy. No, you're right. You're right. You answer the questions. Energy. Very basically, that's what energy. Fat.
Glucose.
Glucose. Perfect. Yeah. What about fat?
Hormones.
Hormones. Yeah.
Keeping your body warm.
Yeah. Insulation. Yeah.
Energy.
Energy. Yeah.
Brain functioning.
And brain functioning. Yeah. And a lot of these have multiple purposes as well. It's not just that we keep them just for one, but that's our sort of main areas. So what we say are macronutrients are protein, carbohydrate and fat. We're going to be talking mainly about protein and carbohydrate today. But it's also important to talk about dietary fibre. Who knows what fibre does in our body? Yes?
Makes you regular.
Makes you regular, helps keep things moving, keeps you going to the toilet regularly. Yeah. It's also a really good nutrient for helping our body metabolize food well, stopping us from sort of feeling too full, like helping us to feel full for longer with our food. So it's a really important addition to our food to make us not get hungry too quickly. Our micronutrients, which is a word that you might hear every now and then, is kind of your vitamins and minerals. Now we're not going to go into these in too much detail, but these are all the things that we also need in our body to make everything work well. So these guys, your macronutrients. Who knows how a car works? What do we put into a car? Yeah.
Petrol. You need something moving at all times.
Yeah. So this is like our petrol. So this is not going to be a very good example when everyone has EVs. But this is like our petrol. Our protein, our carbohydrate, and our fat. That's what keeps our bodies moving every day. Your micronutrients. What else do you have to put into your car to get it to work well? Oil, yes. So your car will keep working. Your body will keep working with sort of basic protein, carbohydrate, and fat. But to make it work well, we need to make sure we get these micronutrients as well. And so getting a good range of foods, lots of different colourful foods within our diet, trying to have different sorts of foods throughout the day helps our body to work well. Alright, so what we're going to talk about first, which relates to people who are doing lots of sport, is carbohydrate. So we heard before carbohydrate's good for energy. We've talked a little bit about where those carbohydrate foods come from. What happens if we don't use up our carbohydrates straight away? Does anyone know what we do with it? Yeah.
Gets turned into fat.
Pardon?
Gets turned into
It can get turned into fat. Yeah, absolutely.
We store it away.
We can store it away. Yeah, so we can store it away in lots of parts of our body. We can store it away, convert it to glycogen, and then it gets stored in our muscles or liver. But you're right, if we eat too much of it, particularly if we're doing, say if you're not doing as much training and you're eating, what's some, let's say, bad carbohydrates, some foods that maybe aren't so good for us? Can anyone think of any? Sugar, so lots of sugary things, yeah. What else might we have that's got carbohydrate in it? Yeah. No. What about
Like white bread, maybe?
white bread? Yeah. McDonald's, KFC, lots of takeaway kind of foods, fish and chips. Yeah. So these moderation. But if you're having more than your body needed, that's when they get converted to fat. Yeah. But if you're doing lots of training, so what happens is we eat our carbohydrates, they get broken down into our body, so we eat them, they go through our, into our stomach, they get converted into glucose and glycogen, and we can use them straight away. So you eat food, provides you energy, you can go and do your training or your competition. And if we don't need it, it gets converted to glycogen and we can use it for later. But we need to have the right sorts of carbohydrates so that we're able to use them appropriately for our fencing, other kinds of activity, or store them away. So when we talk about carbohydrates, we're talking about anything starchy, so those grain foods, but what else is a carbohydrate? Someone talked about it before.
Like sugar.
Sugar, yeah, so sort of sweet and starchy is your carbohydrates. When is a good time to have let's say the starchy carbohydrates? Yep.
Like an hour before you need energy.
An hour before you need energy, yep. Any other ideas? Who's had carbohydrates today? When did you have them first? Breakfast. Anyone else? Yes.
I had them like 15 minutes ago.
For lunch? Yep. And what sort of carbohydrates are we talking about?
Bread.
Bread? Yeah. Who else? What else do we have for breakfast? What's another carbohydrate?
Cereal.
Cereal? Yeah. What about from the back? Anyone down there? Want to share what they had for breakfast or lunch that's the carbohydrate?
Rice.
Rice. Perfect. Yeah. Anyone else? Yep.
We have like potato chips.
Potato chips. Yep. Probably a bit more fat than carbohydrate, but yeah, they do have some carbohydrate in them. So a good way of thinking about it is that we sort of have these everyday carbohydrates is the way I want to look at this. These are the foods that are good for you to be having every day. They provide us with energy. We want to be having them at each of our meal times. They provide us with energy for that sort of period of time. So you have them for breakfast, they give you energy through the morning. Have them at lunch, give you energy through the afternoon. And then between that, if you need some different types of energy, then we have the sugary ones. So we've got, so who knows what legumes means? Beans and lentils and chickpeas. Who eats those? Good, awesome. I'm always trying to promote them. I'm not vegetarian, but I always try and promote them because they're a really good source of nutrition. So that's good for some of you having them. Pasta rice and noodles, potato, fermented and yams, so sort of root vegetables. Bread, crackers and things, and they could be ordinary ones or they could be gluten-free. Fruit, so fruit's a carbohydrate. Could be fresh fruit, canned fruit, dried fruit. Who would have thought that milk and soy milk and yogurt was a carbohydrate? Do you guys know that? Yeah, you did? Excellent. Things like muesli bars, breakfast cereals and grains. So who would have these at every one of their meals? Some people, some not. Yeah. What meal might you skip them? Yeah.
Dinner.
Dinner. Yeah. Don't have any potatoes or rice or pasta.
Rice.
Yep. Could we
Maybe.
have rice? Yep.
Not like every day.
Not every day. Yeah. What was that, sorry?
Breakfast.
Breakfast, you skip them. What do you have for breakfast?
Cereal.
Yep, so
That's
cereals are there, yeah. So you might find that,
Like morning tea and afternoon tea.
morning tea and afternoon tea. So for these ones here, we want you to have them at your main meals. Your snacks might be a good time as well, and that's when you might have something like a piece of fruit or a muesli bar. But those main meals, does everyone have 3 meals a day? Mostly? Yeah. It's sometimes easier when you're at school because you're always stopping for those meals, but it is really important to try and eat your meals regularly throughout the day. So these are the ones we want to try and have: breakfast, lunch and dinner. They provide us with energy, they're going to fuel us for our training, and they're going to keep us going throughout the day. What about these ones? When should we have these? Yeah.
when you've done a lot of training and you're really tired, you can have them to give you a little boost. Or
So after your training?
like before.
Before your training? Yeah. What does everyone think about that? Good idea?
Like when you need energy that's immediately metabolized.
Yeah. Yep. So you're right. You're right. So these ones, these are the ones that kind of get into our bloodstream really quickly. They give us a good, quick, short, sharp amount of energy. So if you're needing to, so with a fencing competition, my understanding is that you have bouts. Yeah. How many of those are you having every day?
Oh, was it like 10 years before yesterday, maybe?
Okay. Yeah. And do you need any sort of quick acting, sort of fast energy before those bouts? Yeah. Yes. Yes. We've got a nod from the back. Perfect. Yeah. So this would be the time. Now I'm not saying that you need to go and have chocolate and chocolate milk and things like this before every bout, but if you were to have these foods, that would be the time to do it. They give you energy. They give you a quick, short amount of energy, but then that energy's gone from your body pretty quickly. So they don't keep you going for long. And I think that's really important for you guys to remember, is that if you sat down and just ate a packet of jelly beans for lunch, it's not going to give you the energy throughout the afternoon that you need. You need to base your meals on these ones so that it gives you that energy to keep you going. So things like sort of sports drinks and orange juice and things like that, they're probably just an every now and then kind of thing. They're not going to be an everyday. You don't want to base your meals around these. It's the same thing, I don't know how well you can see these pictures, but this is more sort of white bread sort of carbohydrates. Is that they're okay, but you're better off with the ones with the grains in them for your main meals, because they're going to keep you feeling full and give you more energy for longer than the white bread ones. Does it make sense? Yeah? Alright. So I'm going to skip through this, but there is some information if you guys wanted to calculate how much carbohydrate you need for your body. There's some information you guys can take home at the end to do that. Alright, protein. So we talked a little bit about protein before and why we might need it. So that's another one of those big macronutrients. So we have protein from our food. So fish, meat, chicken, eggs, beans, lentils. Then it gets broken down into amino acids. Someone talked about amino acids before. Yep, so they're kind of like the building blocks in our body. We want to use it for muscle development and repair. It actually helps with our immune system, so it helps us to stay nice and healthy and helps us to keep full. So this is our sources of protein, but when do we need to have protein?
Like not immediately before you eat anything, but throughout the day maybe.
Throughout the day, good answer. Yep, any others? Yep.
Is it at least half an hour after exercising?
Yep. And why do you think you need protein after exercising?
Muscle regrowth?
Yeah, absolutely. And it does depend on the length of the exercise that you're doing as well. How long are your trainings normally?
2 hours.
2 hours, full on. And in that 2 hours, how intense is the training? It varies. Yeah. So it will depend on sort of, I guess, how intense your training is, whether you need to have extra protein afterwards. But with your protein, another good way of just thinking is putting it into each of those main meals every day. So if we think about breakfast, what sort of protein foods could you have at breakfast? Yep.
Eggs.
Eggs, yep.
Milk.
Milk, yep. So you have a bowl of Wheat Bix or something, you've got milk with it? Yep.
Bread.
Bread has a little bit of protein in it, yeah. Not as much as some of the others, but it does have a bit. Yep.
Bacon.
Bacon, yeah. Anyone else? Yep.
Cereal?
Cereal, yeah. Can make, yep.
Nuts in your muesli.
Nuts in your muesli, perfect, yeah. And you could mix this all together and you could make a smoothie and you could have some protein in there, you'd have carbohydrates. So some foods like milk products are a bit of protein and a bit of carbohydrate. So they're good to have together. So breakfast, you've got those options. What about lunch? What sort of proteins did we have at lunch today? Chicken. Anyone else? Yep.
Cheese.
Cheese. Yep.
Yogurt.
Yogurt. Anyone else? Yep. Ham. Yep. Anyone else? Lunch is sometimes a tricky time to get protein, and I find this often happens with people at school, is that it's a harder time to get protein because sometimes you don't want to eat something that's gone warm in your lunchbox. There are lots of different ways that you can have protein, so things like, who likes peanut butter? Yeah? So peanut butter is quite a good protein to have in your lunchbox since it doesn't matter if it gets a little bit warm, whereas having something like chicken or ham might not be quite good if your sandwiches got a bit warm. Things like canned tuna, does anyone like that? Yeah. Yeah, so that's a nice quick and easy protein you can have. Things like falafel, tofu, probably yogurt in your lunch. So having one of these with each of your meals is also really important. Right, again you've got some calculations if you want to figure out your protein amounts after this. Right, so let's put it all together. So we're going to look at this one first. This is putting the proteins and the carbohydrates, and then we're going to talk about vegetables as well, together on a plate. So let's say you guys are doing a 2-hour training session. Sounds quite full on, but it might be sort of up and down within that training session. This is how we want to think about your plate, what it looks like when you guys go to have your dinner. A little bit of your lunch, but it's a bit harder at lunchtime. Let's just think about your dinner for now. You want to have some of the carbohydrates, so they're going to give you the energy. You want the protein to help you build your muscles, replace any protein synthesis, and also some vegetables or salad. Who thinks their meals look like this? Who thinks there's some work that we could do? What are the areas that are a bit harder to have enough of?
Raw veggies.
Raw veggies, yeah. So sometimes people don't like vegetables. So what we're going to think about is how can we have things that we like but we don't love, but that you can have every day. So what are some vegetables that we do like?
Like cucumber, carrot, tomato.
Yeah, so salad vegetables are really good and they're coming back into season. So for all the parents and caregivers that are buying them, they're getting a bit cheaper. Yeah.
Broccoli and cauliflower.
Broccoli and cauliflower. If you like the cooked vegetables, that's really good. Yeah. What about things like homemade coleslaw? Does anyone like coleslaw? Yeah. Yeah. So that's quite a good one to add to your meals if you don't like the cooked vegetables. But what we're going to try and do is try and get some vegetables in every day. We're going to try and have some of those carbohydrates and some proteins. So that's a good way of thinking about how much you need on a kind of a moderate training day. If you're going to do heaps and heaps of training, or maybe before competition, and you want to fuel your body to keep you going through that competition, we're going to have more of those carbohydrates, about the same amount of protein, and just because you've got enough room on your plate, we have a bit less of the vegetables. But this is only when you're going to be doing sort of a lot more training. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if we can kind of alter it a little bit like that, then you're going to get the right nutrients that you need. Okay. So, what about timings of meals during the day? How often should we be eating? Every 2.5 hours? Who eats every 2.5 hours? Some people? Yeah. Who goes like hours without eating? Who forgets to eat? Yeah. It does happen, yeah. What happens if you go for a really long time without eating? Yeah.
Your energy levels lower.
Your energy levels go, yeah. Yeah.
You get hungry, you get angry.
You get
not a nice
hungry,
person
you
to be
get
around.
angry. Yeah. Yeah, you can get quite irritable. Yeah. What time do you guys typically do your training sessions, like during not school holidays, but during the school week? What time do you train?
Evenings.
After dinner.
After dinner? Yeah. Evenings? Yeah.
Like 6 to 8 o'clock.
Okay. Has everybody had their dinner by the time they go to that training? No. Yeah. And this is what we've got to think about with timing of meals, is that that's kind of, if you guys are training for 2 hours in the evening and you're not having your dinner first, because sometimes it's not realistic, not time for people to get ready, you're going into that training, you might not have had enough fuel, and then that means you can't train to your absolute, to your best. So what I want you to think about, so let's just say, this is going to be a lighter training, because I know you guys are doing about 2 hours training, but you say, typical day at school or work, then you do maybe an hour's training, you might have breakfast, lunch and dinner, so those 3 main meals where we're having carbohydrate and protein and maybe trying to get some vegetables or some fruit in there. And then morning snack, afternoon snack, and then something before bed. You might not always need this depending on what size your dinner is, but these snacks are really important, particularly if you're going to be doing the training before you have your dinner. Who thinks that they're missing some arrows on this? Who's missing some? Yeah. What do you think you miss?
The last one?
The last one, don't have this one. Don't feel hungry, don't need it. Yeah, you might not if it's not a busy training day. Yeah.
All of the grey ones.
All of the grey ones. Yeah. Yeah. You just go main meals, you don't have the snacks. And look, depending on how much you eat at your meals and what time your training is, that might be okay. But what often happens for people that are doing a lot of training is if you guys skip these ones out, unless you can eat enough good food at lunch that's going to keep your energy levels going through your training, there'll be training will start to dip. We've got coaches in the room, has anyone seen energy levels dipping, mood dipping? Yeah. So it does happen that if you're not fueling your body right, then you can't get the best out of your training. Now you guys have all come here for a 3-day camp, 2-day tournament, so you guys are really keen on your sport, and I'm sure you're very good at it as well, and so you want to get the most out of it that you can. So you want to be trying to fuel your body so that you can get the most out of your training. Alright, so what this might look like, don't worry about the quantity so much, but breakfast could be, let's say, banana, oats, milk, peanut butter, so extra protein in there, so not just oats and milk, you might put some peanut butter in there as well for a little bit extra protein. A yogurt, muesli bar and an apple for morning tea, some kind of sandwich and some crackers and a carrot for lunch, smoothie in the afternoon, spaghetti bolognese for dinner, and then maybe a little something in the evening. This is on a light training day. Now this is not going to be the same for everyone in this room. You're all different ages, all different stages, you're probably doing slightly different training, but it's just to give you an idea of how you could sort of spread that out throughout the day. Alright. If this is a hard training day, so does anybody do anything before school or work in the morning? Yeah, what are you guys doing? Going to the gym or a run or anything like that? Swimming? Yeah, alright.
Bike ride.
6 o'clock in the morning you're going swimming. Yeah, alright, so an hour of swimming in the morning, yeah.
A bike ride.
You go for a bike ride? Yeah. Yeah. You go for a run? Yeah. So something before you even get started for the day. Depending on what you're doing, you might have a little something to eat before your training, or you might go straight into breakfast afterwards. Typical day at school or work, training at night time. Now, I guess if your training is later in the afternoon, you might only have, well, you know, it's not true. If you have your training over here, you need to have afternoon snack. You need a really good fuel before you go to training. Then you might do your training and you might go straight into dinner. But for those who have had dinner first, you might have a snack after your training. My point is that sometimes you need to have lots and lots of snack opportunities during the day. Now, depending on where you're at in your life, whether you make your lunch, parents make it, other people in your family make it, it's important that you are trying to get the right foods so that you've got the right things with you throughout the day. Now, an afternoon snack before training is something that I see teenagers missing out on all the time. Because you finish school at about 3 o'clock, don't eat anything, not feeling that hungry, and then go into training and are really hungry afterwards. So try and get a snack in. So So what that might look like is similar to before, but extra, maybe like peanut butter on toast and banana, milk-based drink after training, and then maybe some extra snacks in the evening.
Wait, sorry, I had a question about.
Yep.
When you say hard training day, how many hours of training total per morning would you say that is?
I think if you're doing a couple of trainings a day, you know, like say if you've got a swimming in the morning and then you've got something else in the afternoon, you might be doing, say, if you're doing 2 hours of fencing training and you've got something in the morning, you know, that could be 2 or 3 hours of training. Obviously, everybody's going to be doing slightly different amounts.
Yeah, because also I'm sure, well, we have like training on Saturday morning 3
Yep.
hours as well, and I think that's quite popular, so.
Yep.
With similar like usual timing.
So what time is your training on Saturday morning?
We have 9 to 12. Are you guys in Wellington?
Yeah, something like 10.
Yeah, so similar, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So 9 to 12, you have much to eat before it?
Yeah, that's okay.
Yep.
Would you recommend like eating something during that training as well?
Yeah. Depending on, and this is, I guess, my lack of understanding of fencing, but if you've got like a 3-hour training, obviously there'll be sort of ups and downs in intensity, but it's a long period of time, and if you can have something to eat in between, I think it's really beneficial. So we'll get on to that in a minute, what could be good things to have sort of in between those sessions. My biggest piece of advice to you, without kind of making you feel like you're overeating all the time, is just be prepared. Think about the old Scouts motto, be prepared, have snacks, have fuel with you. If you think you're going to be away from home, going straight to training, you're going to have these big long training sessions so that you can keep fueling the body, because sometimes after a 3-hour training, you might not feel like eating that much, so you kind of have to keep yourself fueled in between. Okay. I'm just going to skip through that and then come back. This one here. Okay. So this could be something on training days that you've got quite a long training session, or it could be on competition days that when you've got short amounts of time, so less than half an hour, all you really want to have is some simple carbohydrates. You want something that's going to get into you quickly. Bananas are great. Muesli bars are pretty good. Like juice, you know, like just a small thing, like those sort of Tetra packs of juice can be quite a good idea. Sports drinks totally depends on whether you want to have them or not. You don't have to have sports drinks, but they do serve a place if you've got sort of a long day of competition. But if you've got sort of maybe a couple of hours between your trainings, that's when you might want to have something a little bit more substantial. So whether it's something like a yogurt, a sandwich, some fruit, a wrap, sushi if you're away, because I know sometimes, do you guys go away for your competitions? Yeah, away from home. So sometimes you might not have access to the foods that you're used to having. So sushi can be quite good for sort of a between meal snack when you've got a couple of hours to spare. If you try and have some of these foods, like say like a wrap or something, half an hour before you do your competition, what's going to happen? What was that?
Yeah, it's full.
You're going to feel full, you're going to feel full, you're going to feel horrible, but also your body can't use up the energy very effectively. So there's two things. You could feel awful, but you're also not getting the best out of the food either. You're better off having a banana or half a banana because it's not as heavy, it's the sugars are well utilised by your body, and then you're not going to feel like you're jiggling around while you're doing your competition. If it's more than 2 hours, you're just going to go for your meal, like we talked about before, so some carbohydrate and some protein. Another way of looking at it is on competition day. So if it's 4 hours before your competition, how do they start in the morning? What time are they going to start the weekend? 9, okay, right. So if you're starting 9 o'clock in the morning, about 2 hours before, you're going to be mostly wanting to have carbohydrates. You don't need as much protein and fat. You want that meal to be mostly carbohydrate because that's what your body can use at that time for energy. The closer you get to your competition, it's mostly carbohydrate, a little bit of protein, but you don't need to worry about the fat so much. So it's very simplistic. What is something you might eat before a competition day? What's something that's worked well for you? Anyone? Yes.
Honey on toast.
Honey on toast, yeah, good one. Yeah. So that's good. So competition day, honey on toast, you've got toast, you've got honey, so it's quite a high carbohydrate meal. It's going to sit a bit better in your tummy. Yep, anything else? You guys must eat something on competition day.
Like, I think a lot of people get nervous, so they tend to eat little.
What's that?
A lot of people get nervous and might throw up if they eat a lot of food.
Yes.
So I think people tend to have like a little, like a pack of lollies and some like chocolate milk or something just as a go-to.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point that actually some people on competition day you do feel nervous, your tummy might be a bit upset, kind of that butterfly feeling. Eating too much can make you feel quite unwell. So first and foremost, don't try something new on competition day. Stick to something that you know. But if you don't think you're going to be able to eat, you've got a long day of bouts, what do we have to think about?
You could do like liquid, like
Yep.
a smoothie.
Yeah,
Or
so
like up and goes or something.
Yep, so depending on the consistency, so up and goes are okay, they've got carbohydrate and protein in them. I see people have got sort of some sports drinks and things. That might be the time that sipping away on a sports drink could be quite good because they're just carbohydrate and so they do get into your body and can be used pretty easily. If you were to have a smoothie, make sure you've done it before so you're not trying a smoothie out for the first time on competition day. But the other thing we've got to think about is that if you know you're not going to be able to eat well on competition day, go back a day and think how can you eat better to fuel yourself and get yourself ready for competition day. Yep.
For me, I get nerves and I don't want to eat.
Yeah.
Even though I should eat.
Yeah.
Is there anything I could eat like that would make me like want to eat it or something?
Yeah. So the longer you go without eating, the harder it is to eat sometimes. Of course, people have experienced that. So I think in those situations, I'm going to come put my map. I think sipping away on things. So yeah, an up and go for a lot of people is quite a good option. Make sure it's nice and cold though. Energy drinks, so not energy drinks, so sports drinks. So things like Powerade and Gatorade, they can be quite good. Yeah.
At any point in time, what would you say of drinking like an energy, like a Monster, one of those really high sugar drinks?
That is a very good question. I was going to come to that. Alright. Who drinks energy drinks? You people? Yeah. Why do you drink them? No. Why would you go for Red Bull, Monster, whatever it is?
They taste good.
They taste good, yeah? Alright.
Cool branding.
What was it, sorry?
Cool branding.
Cool branding, yeah. Do you think they help you to do better on competition day? What do the coaches think?
Absolutely not. But they do make me popular.
Yeah. So those kind of drinks, so they have carbohydrate in them. So actually they are providing carbohydrate. It's not always, if we're comparing something like an energy drink to a sports drink, the concentration, so kind of how dense the carbohydrate is in the sports drink, is usually better than the energy in like a Monster or something, which means that your body can absorb it better. It gets utilised better in your body, if that makes sense. So they both give you sugars, they both give you the carbohydrates. The other thing that a sports drink has, does anyone know? What do we get in sports drinks that we don't get in energy drinks? Electrolytes, yeah. And why do we need electrolytes? Why do we need electrolytes? When do we lose electrolytes? How do we lose electrolytes? Sweat, yeah. The older you get, the more you will sweat. So the 9-year-old in the room is probably not going to sweat as much as the adults in the room. But if you are in, I don't know, you guys wear a big kit? Yeah. You sweat a lot under there? Yeah, yeah. So you will be losing more electrolytes than someone who is, I don't know, doing a different kind of sport. Can't think of an example. So the sports drinks compared to an energy drink is going to give you electrolytes as well. So he's not here now, but an answer to the question, what about energy drinks? I think totally your choice, but if you want something that's going to be better for your performance, I'd go with a sports drink instead. The energy drinks also give you things like caffeine and guarana, so they might give you a little bit of a boost, make you feel like you're on top of the world. That's, again, a personal thing. You won't get that in sports drinks, but you don't necessarily need it either. Alright. I know we're kind of getting close to the end. Right. So we've talked about the importance of eating regularly throughout the day, making sure that you've got snacks with you throughout the day so that you don't turn up to training underfueled. What about recovery? What do we need to do for recovery? So I know someone said earlier about having chocolate milk. So we have chocolate milk for recovery. Yep. So chocolate milk is good. It contains carbohydrate and protein. Those two things that we need here, protein and carbohydrates. It refuels us, so it makes sure that we get all that sugar going into our liver and our muscles so that we can store it again for later. And it helps to repair our muscles. The other thing you always need to remember with recovery is that you need to rehydrate, particularly if you've been in these big heavy suits, you've been sweating a lot, whether you have a sports drink that might be appropriate in some situations, or just plenty of water afterwards to make sure that you're rehydrated. How do you know when you've had enough to drink and you're hydrated well? I'm not going to know, you've got all the answers. Someone else. How do we know that we're well hydrated?
You feel like you can't drink anymore?
Well, yeah, possibly. You feel like you can't drink anymore. Something way more simplistic than that.
The colour of our pee.
The colour of your pee, yes. So let me just see something. There we go. So, not so easy to see on here. Pee chart. What happens when your pee is a kind of brownie colour?
See a doctor.
Yeah.
See a doctor. Good answer. See a doctor. Yeah. We really don't want to be down here. It is very, very common for athletes of all sorts of sports to be very dehydrated. So once you're about 3% dehydrated, so that's not much, it's a tiny amount, it can impair your performance by 10%. So a little bit of dehydration, a lot of impairment in your performance. So you need to be drinking lots. Right. So look at your pee colour. Look at it before you go into your competition. Look at it after. Keep sipping away afterwards. If you can sip throughout, I don't know what the situation is like, how easy it is to get all your kit off and on, to get to the bathrooms. Is that an issue or? No? Easy enough? Sometimes could be an issue, yeah. You need to figure out, I guess, like a plan for how you're going to be hydrated and keep hydrated throughout the day. So you get dehydrated, you're not able to move around as fast, you can't actually access your glycogen as well, but you can't think as well, your performance goes down. So water is the first choice, but sports drinks can be helpful, so bear that in mind. Now let me just, one other thing I wanted to talk about. Now there's information about all of these up here you guys can grab. Now one other thing that Baz mentioned was that sometimes you guys are eating away from home. And you might be at tournaments and things. Some of you are obviously away from home now. Who is not from Hawke's Bay? Heaps people. Cool. Welcome to Hawke's Bay. So when you're away from home, and this might be for some of the older athletes or for the parents as well, is just to think about always trying to go for carbohydrates, protein, and fruit and vegetables when you're doing shopping, if you're having to buy things kind of on the run while you're away from home. Use convenience foods if you have to and you need to, and there's lots of good things out there. So things like, the 90-second rices, the sort of soft noodles, getting breakfast cereals, yogurt, canned tunas, things. Sorry, it's just gone out of power. That anyway, it's my last slide. Things that are sort of ready-made if you don't have very many cooking facilities. When it comes to fruit and vegetables, bags of salad, bags of coleslaw that you can whip into meals are also very useful. But the most important thing I think to remember as well is that if you're going away for competition, or even if you're in a competition close to home, don't try something new on competition day. Has anyone done that before? Tried a different thing to eat or drink and it hasn't turned out well? Yeah. It does happen. It's tempting sometimes if you've sort of read something or you've heard something and you think, oh, I should try that. Try it on a training day, don't try it on a competition day, because it could upset your stomach, and the last thing that you want is to be worrying about an upset stomach when you are doing your competition. Okay, well, that's pretty much me out of time anyway, and I've got to put my laptop in, so that was the last slide. So any other burning questions before we finish? No. What have you learned? Tell me one thing you've learned from this side of the room. Yeah.
It's better to eat all your food at different times, but eat a lot of the same sort of food when you're away from home or far away, and just to make sure your diet is going to give you long-lasting energy that you need for the day.
Fantastic. You can do the talking next time as well. Yep.
That it's good to eat before going to bed.
Yes, yeah. So if you need to, and why do you think it's good to have that last sort of snack before bed?
And then you don't get hungry.
Yeah, it's just sometimes it's just a way of catching up on your fueling across the day. So not everybody will have that pre-bed snack, but sometimes people might if they've had a really big heavy day of training. Yeah.
It's good to be hydrated.
Good to be hydrated. How do we know that we're hydrated?
Pea colour.
Pea colour. Yeah, perfect. All right. And what about from the back? What have you guys learned? One thing, someone.
Learn some new foods that you can eat.
What was that, sorry?
Learn some new foods that you can eat that are good to eat.
I missed it.
Clever.
And some new foods that you're able to eat.
Okay. And what about, are we back over here? Well, you already knew lots from last time, so you can also take a session next time.
I had a question if that's okay.
Yeah.
We hear a lot about like how important protein is, I guess. It's quite like a popular thing online, I guess. Talk about protein, especially after resistance training.
Yep.
But I was wondering how important it actually is, like that 30-minute like window, I guess.
It's a really good question, and I probably didn't cover it all that well. So protein is very important, particularly after resistance training. If your resistance training is 30 minutes leading into your next meal, just have your next meal. Your next meal should have protein in it. If there's going to be a really big gap until your next meal, that's when sort of a recovery snack is good that has protein and carbohydrate. So it is usually important to have protein and carbohydrate together. That's why things like chocolate milk are really good. Plain milk is also really good. It's just that people enjoy chocolate milk more, and that's why they tend to have it as that recovery drink. But if you just like plain milk or you want to make a smoothie, that's also a good option.
Okay. There's also like people say like maybe like 30 grams or 20 grams. Is there anything that you would recommend like quantity wise?
For protein?
Yeah.
As a meal or as a snack?
Just I guess as a meal.
Yeah. So protein across the day. So there's actually a worksheet that you can figure out your protein. Yeah. So I'd say that's the best thing to do. But one thing to remember with protein is your body can't actually metabolize more than about 30 grams of protein in one meal. So loading up heaps on protein powders or a really big dense meal is not going to give you those gains that you might be looking towards. The important thing with protein is try and spread it out across the day. Adolescents typically don't need heaps of extra protein, depending on the sport obviously. But if you have it at each of those meals, so you have, I don't know, milk and yogurt for breakfast, you have like some chicken and a sandwich at lunchtime, and then you have your meal that might have some meat or some vegetables or something in the evening. In between you might have something that's got some nuts with it or some seeds, you might have cheese and crackers. You're actually getting protein across the day, so you don't necessarily need to have more. You can put things like protein powders in food,
So does that mean if you go to a restaurant, from a nutritional point of view, a 50-gram tiny steak is the same as a 400-gram massive steak?
What do you mean?
Well, if you can only absorb 30 grams of protein.
Yeah, your body will still utilise it, but in terms of like those, in terms of, I guess, the benefits of muscle growth, you can't keep just sort of dosing on protein in one meal and expect those muscles to keep growing as a result. So the best thing to do is to spread it out. It's also really important from a growth perspective to have different types of protein, and so I'm not an advocate for any type of dietary pattern, but I think you do get good sources of protein from plant-based proteins, from meat proteins, from a whole range of from dairy proteins as well. So the other thing you get from that is you get a different range of micronutrients as well. So having a variety is really useful. Yeah. The reason I bring up the protein thing and about not having too much as one is that I do see lots of people who just don't eat much throughout the day and they have this huge meal in the evening and then wonder why they're not getting the results that they want. But actually, if we sort of spread things out across the day better, it is much better metabolised into the body. Yeah. Very good question. Any other questions before we finish? Yeah.
What sort of time frame for exercising would you say it should be?
More than 30 minutes, I'd say. Sort of between the 30 and 60 minutes is probably the perfect amount of time. As you get closer to exercising, you wouldn't want to have anything that's sort of too heavy, and you'd want to have something that's mostly carbohydrate in that very short 30 minutes before. Otherwise, in the 30 to 60 minutes before would be ideal. Yeah.
Do you know how long it takes for the sugary things to give you the energy effect in minutes?
Yeah. How long do you think it takes?
Like 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah. It's not long. Yeah. And the other thing as well is that everybody's very different as well. So the impact that they might feel would be different to others. But yeah, within that sort of 30 minutes, if you've got those high carbohydrate, sugary type foods. Yeah. Alright, we've got a yawn at the front, so that might be time for me to wrap up. I'm sure you guys have got a busy afternoon planned as well. So thanks for your time. There's some information out there, and if you've got any questions, you can just drop me an email. My website details right there.
I'll put that through. Alright, round of applause. Good. Alright, I need you guys after your break clap. You're going to get up, grab your drinks, grab your books, etc., put things over to the side, head over to the main hall and get to the next place. 3, 2, 1, go. Smash with me.